Keanu Reeves was just another quiet observer, strolling through a sunny park on what seemed like a regular day. But when he spotted a man sneaking into a wedding, something in his gut told him to stay. What happened next would expose a secret the bride had spent years trying to bury, and change the course of her life forever. But the real shock came when Keanu stepped in, not as a celebrity, but as someone who understood the power of facing the past to embrace the future. What he witnessed that day would leave you questioning, can a small act of intervention truly change someone's destiny? Stick around to find out, and hit that subscribe button because tomorrow we'll reveal an even bigger secret that'll blow your mind. Trust us, you don't want to miss it. It was a day like any other for Keanu Reeves, quiet, almost meditative, as he wandered through the streets of Los Angeles. His path, however, would soon intersect with something he could never have anticipated. He was walking through a park, earbuds in, when the cheerful sound of laughter and music reached his ears. He turned to look, spotting a large, white tent set up for what appeared to be an outdoor wedding. The guests were dressed in their finest attire, the air filled with the scent of flowers and the sound of live music. But as Keanu stood there, admiring the beauty of it all, something felt off, a feeling in his gut that told him to stay just a little longer. He moved closer, curious, his eyes scanning the crowd of well-wishers. That's when he saw him, a man in a tuxedo, clearly out of place. His eyes darted nervously, and he slipped behind a pillar near the entrance, glancing around as though trying to blend in with the guests. Keanu's instincts kicked in. It wasn't the man's appearance that raised suspicion, but the way he was moving, furtively, like someone who didn't belong. Keanu's attention sharpened, and as he approached the area, he realized what was happening. The man was crashing the wedding. Just as Keanu was about to intervene, the doors to the tent swung open. The bride, a stunning woman with flowing white hair, stood in the doorway, radiant and smiling. She looked like she was in the midst of the happiest moment of her life, but when her gaze landed on the man trying to sneak past the entrance, everything changed. Her smile faltered for a split second, her eyes widening in recognition. The man at the door froze. For a moment, the entire world seemed to stand still. The guests, oblivious to the drama unfolding before them, continued to mingle and laugh. Keanu, however, saw it all. The sudden tension in the air, the unspoken history between the bride and the intruder. Then, without hesitation, the bride's smile vanished entirely. She took a step forward, her voice calm but cutting as she addressed the man. "What are you doing here?" The crashing man looked caught off guard but tried to remain composed. I just wanted to see you," he stammered. "Please let me explain." Keanu could sense the weight of the unspoken words between them. There was more to this than a wedding crasher. The bride's posture stiffened, and a look of pure disdain crossed her face. "You have no place here. You're not welcome." Keanu, still watching from a distance, felt the tension mount. It was clear the man wasn't just a random wedding crasher, he was someone with a deep, painful connection to the bride. Keanu couldn't shake the sense that the man was desperately seeking closure, but the bride wasn't ready to give him that. Her reaction told a much deeper, darker story. Before he could step in, the bride spoke again, her voice now trembling with suppressed emotion. "You ruined my life once. Don't think you can just walk back into it like this. I'm done with you." The man's face fell. His hands clenched into fists, and for a moment, it seemed as if he might lash out in anger. But then he dropped his gaze, his shoulders sagging as though the weight of the past had come crashing down on him. Keanu took a deep breath. The words weren't enough to explain the depths of the situation, but the expression on the bride's face said it all. She had a past with this man, one she had obviously tried to bury. The guests, finally noticing the confrontation, began to whisper among themselves, unsure of what had just happened. The bride's face had turned pale, and her breath was shallow. Keanu could see the tension in her every movement, the emotional storm she was trying to hold back. There was a moment of silence, a profound pause in the air, before the man turned on his heel and walked away, disappearing into the distance without saying another word. The bride stood there, motionless, as if frozen in time. The crowd, uncertain of what to do, began to murmur, but Keanu made his way forward, gently pushing through the confused guests. When he reached the bride, her eyes met his, and for a moment she looked like she might crumble under the weight of everything. Keanu placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice soft yet firm. "Are you okay?" Her eyes welled up, and she looked away, biting her lip. "I didn't want anyone to know, not here, not today," she whispered, her voice cracking. "But I guess I can't hide it anymore." Keanu nodded, his expression one of understanding. "Whatever happened, you don't have to face it alone. You deserve to have this day for yourself. You don't owe anyone anything." Tears silently spilled down her cheeks, and she took a shaky breath. "It's just, he was everything to me once. He tore my world apart, and now I'm marrying someone who doesn't know any of this. I didn't want him to ruin the happiest day of my life. But I can't forget him." Keanu gently squeezed her shoulder in support. "You're stronger than you realize. And no matter what's in your past, today is about you and the person you love. That's what matters." She nodded, wiping away the tears, her hands trembling. After a long pause, she finally spoke. "I don't want to let him take anything more from me. I'm ready to move forward. For good." Keanu gave her a small, reassuring smile before turning to leave. As he walked away, he could hear the soft murmurs of the crowd as they began to slowly return to their seats. But in that moment, Keanu knew something profound had just happened, a deep, silent reckoning between the bride and her past. Whatever the future held, she had faced her truth today. And that was the most powerful thing she could do. By the time the ceremony resumed, the bride was no longer just a woman in a white dress. She was someone who had faced her demons, someone who was ready to embrace the love waiting for her. And though Keanu's part in the day had been brief, he knew he'd just witnessed something life-changing. Sometimes, even a quiet intervention could help someone find the courage to confront what they had been running from, for the sake of their future. As the ceremony continued, Keanu lingered near the edge of the park, watching the wedding unfold from a distance. The atmosphere had shifted. The bride, although still visibly shaken, had regained her composure. She stood tall beside her groom, her eyes filled with determination, her smile now more genuine than ever. The shadow of the man from her past seemed to have lifted, or at least had been placed in its rightful context. It was as if the emotional weight she'd carried for so long had finally been acknowledged, and with that acknowledgement, she could let go, even if just for a moment. Keanu, who had always known the power of quiet moments, couldn't help but feel a sense of relief for her. The crowd was no longer watching with curiosity but with respect, no longer whispering with uncertainty, but holding space for the woman who was bravely choosing to embrace her future over her past. She had taken control of her story, and in doing so, she had found a way to move forward. As the vows were exchanged, the guests fell silent, their eyes glued to the couple. Keanu, standing at the back of the crowd, felt an unexpected rush of emotion, something deeper than just the moment. There was something incredibly moving about seeing a person step into their own strength, to witness someone let go of what had haunted them for so long. It wasn't just the wedding that was taking place, it was a transformation, a rebirth. After the ceremony, the reception was set under the stars, and the air was thick with the fragrance of fresh flowers and the soft hum of conversation. Keanu stood off to the side, blending into the shadows, not seeking attention but watching the joy unfold. The bride had found her peace, and the groom, who had stood by her through the turmoil, smiled with pride, his arm wrapped around her in support. She found Keanu amidst the crowd, her eyes scanning the room until they locked on his. There was a softness in her gaze now, a gratitude that spoke louder than words ever could. She walked over, leaving the circle of guests around her to approach him. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice filled with sincerity. "I don't know how to explain it, but you helped me more than you could ever know." Keanu smiled, his eyes warm with understanding. "You did it yourself," he replied. "You were already strong enough. You just needed to see it." She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I didn't think I could face him, or that I could keep going. But today, I chose my future. And I'm finally ready to be the woman I've always wanted to be. Keanu gave her a small, encouraging nod. And that's the most powerful thing anyone can do. Before she could say anything more, the sound of laughter and cheers from the crowd interrupted. The couple was about to have their first dance, and the bride, with a soft but determined smile, excused herself. As Keanu watched her return to her new husband, her posture now brimming with confidence, he knew that what he had witnessed here was far more than just a confrontation, it was a triumph. And while he hadn't been the one to change her life, he had played a small part in that transformation. The dance floor filled with people, music, and joy. But Keanu stayed by the side, content in his quiet observation. Sometimes, it was the smallest moments of intervention that set off the most profound changes. A few words. A few seconds. And just like that, someone could find the strength to change everything. Keanu left the wedding later that evening, slipping away into the night unnoticed, as he often did. But as he walked home, a small smile curled on his lips. He had always been the type to keep to the shadows, to stand aside and let others take center stage. But tonight, he had witnessed a transformation in someone else, and that, in itself, felt like a victory. Sometimes, the most powerful impact comes not from grand gestures, but from being there when someone needs it most, even if it's just to give them the strength to stand tall. Keanu knew this better than anyone, and in that moment, he walked away with a quiet sense of fulfillment, knowing that he'd played his part in a story far greater than anything he could have ever expected. And the bride? She danced, surrounded by those who loved her, her past behind her and her future ahead. As the night wore on, the stars above seemed to shine a little brighter. The warmth of the celebration wrapped around everyone, a reminder that life, despite its challenges, always had room for joy, for second chances, and for redemption. Keanu, walking away from the event with a sense of quiet satisfaction, couldn't help but feel that the universe had aligned just enough to bring him to that park on that particular day. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, glancing at the text from his longtime friend and agent, Alex. "You still in the area? Big surprise for you. Meet me at the bar. It's something you might actually enjoy." Keanu smirked, shaking his head as he pocketed the phone. The last thing he needed was another surprise. He had just been part of something far more meaningful than he ever could have expected. But then, he thought back to how quickly the bride had shifted from fear to strength, from hesitation to empowerment. Maybe, just maybe, the surprise would be something worth his time. He made his way to the bar, the lights of the city flickering like distant constellations guiding his path. As he approached the entrance, he could already hear the faint music and chatter. Stepping inside, he was immediately met by Alex, who gestured to a secluded booth in the corner. "What's all this about?" Keanu asked with a raised eyebrow. Alex grinned, his face lit with that gleam of excitement that meant he was in on something Keanu hadn't anticipated. "You won't believe it, man. There's a new project in the works, and they want you. Need you." Keanu's interest piqued. "Another one of those high-budget, fast-paced action movies?" Alex shook his head. "Nope. This one's different. It's something that fits you perfectly. Something deeper. A role that, honestly, could change the way people see you." Keanu leaned back, processing the words. He wasn't one to chase after fame or accolades, but he was always drawn to stories that felt authentic, that had a deeper meaning. Something that could leave an impression long after the credits rolled. As Alex spoke about the project, Keanu's mind wandered back to the wedding, to the woman who had stepped into her strength. Sometimes, the most profound stories weren't the ones in the headlines, but the ones quietly unfolding in the lives of everyday people. Maybe this project was a chance to tell one of those stories, the kind that made a difference, that helped someone see their own worth. "I'll take a look at the script," Keanu said, his voice steady and thoughtful. "If it resonates, I'm in." Alex smiled, clearly relieved that his pitch had hit the mark. "You're the perfect fit. Trust me, you'll love it." Keanu stood up, pushing the thoughts of the bar, the project, and the surprises aside for a moment. He felt content. The quiet satisfaction from that day, witnessing that woman step into her own power, was enough to carry him through the evening. And tomorrow? Well, tomorrow would bring new opportunities, new surprises, and perhaps new moments of connection. The world didn't need a hero. It needed people willing to help others find their own strength. As Keanu walked out of the bar, he caught a glimpse of himself in the reflection of the glass door. For the first time in a long while, he didn't see the public figure that the world knew. Instead, he saw the man who had simply wanted to do what was right, to quietly make a difference. And that felt like the most honest thing he could ever be. If this story touched your heart, we've got many more that will do the same. Click the screen to discover more tales of hope, compassion, and resilience that will inspire you.